Okay, so for today's deep dive, we're looking at you guys sent us this research paper called Thousands of AI Authors on the Future of AI. But, and this is where it gets interesting, they only sent us the third part. It's like it's like someone gave us the last third of a mystery novel
Mm.
and said, "All right, figure out who did it." So,
Yeah, we're definitely working with an incomplete picture here.
definitely. But that being said, we can still work with what we have,
Right,
right?
absolutely. I mean, even from this fragment, we can still glean some really interesting insights, I think.
For sure. So, just to get us all on the same page, this paper, well, this part of the paper, it's
Yep.
based on a survey of almost 3,000 AI experts, 2,778 to be exact.
Wow.
And they were asked to predict future AI milestones.
And these aren't just, people who are interested in AI. These are researchers who've all published at some of the top AI conferences in the world.
Exactly. So, it's about as expert as you can get, I would say, when it comes to AI. But there is something I noticed that I wanted to get your take on. When it comes to how this whole survey was put together, the researchers, I mean, they offered like a $50 reward for participation. So I'm wondering, could that have skewed the results at all?
That's a really good point. I mean, obviously, when you introduce a financial incentive,
Mm-hmm.
it has the potential to create some bias.
Right.
Like maybe it attracts people who are more likely to just agree with whatever might get them that reward.
Yeah, totally. But you also have to consider that these are established AI researchers we're talking about. And the paper does mention that they put a big emphasis on gathering really high quality data. So while that financial incentive is something to keep in mind, I don't think it would have drastically changed the overall findings.
That makes sense. Now, moving on to the experts themselves, there was one thing that really stood out to me. The paper mentions that the AI researchers who had gotten their undergraduate degrees in Asia tended to predict a faster timeline for high-level machine intelligence compared to the researchers who had gotten their degrees in other parts of the world, like North America or Europe, for example. So I'm curious, what do you make of that? It's a fascinating observation, isn't it? It really makes you think about all the different factors that could be at play here. I mean, it's easy to assume that predicting the future of AI is all about, just the raw technology,
Yeah.
the algorithms and the processing power. But this suggests that there's more to it than that. Cultural background, societal views on technology,
Oh.
even just being surrounded by technology that's changing super rapidly, all of that could shape how optimistic or even how conscious someone is when it comes to predicting how quickly AI will advance.
So it's like a cultural lens
Yeah.
that people are looking through when they're imagining the future, even if it's not intentional.
Exactly. I think it reminds us that even in a field like AI, which we often see as very objective,
Right.
right? It's still subject to these subjective interpretations.
Yeah.
And these cultural influences can really shape our understanding of what's to come.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so we've talked about who these experts are and even some of the inherent biases they might bring to the table, which is really important to acknowledge up front. But there's one more thing about the research itself before we jump into the actual predictions that I found super interesting. And it has to do with the data cleanup process.
Oh, yeah, the paper did mention they had to do a bit of standardizing.
A bit. They had almost 2,800 responses to go through,
True, true.
and they had to make sure all that data was consistent. For example, they mentioned that when they were asking about timelines, some people gave these non-numerical answers.
Like never or eventually.
Exactly. And I mean, never is a long time. How do you even quantify that?
Yeah, that's a challenge with qualitative data, isn't it?
Totally.
You have to find a way to translate those kinds of responses into something measurable.
So what do they do? Just throw those responses out?
Well, they couldn't exactly ignore a significant portion of the data. What they did was they replaced never with an extremely large number of years,
Mm-hmm.
basically representing an open-ended timeline.
Clever. So they still accounted for those responses without throwing the whole analysis out of whack.
Yeah, and on top of that, they had to deal with cases where people gave what they called decreasing probabilities.
Decreasing probabilities. What does that even mean?
So imagine someone says there's a 50% chance of AI doing X by 2030, then a 60% chance by 2035, and then it drops down to 40% by 2040.
Wait, hold on. How can the probability go down in the future?
Exactly. It's statistically inconsistent, right?
Right.
So they had to find ways to adjust for that, too.
Sounds like they had their work cut out for them, that's for sure.
Data cleaning often doesn't get the attention it deserves,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really crucial, especially with a data set this large and complex.
Yeah, if they hadn't done that carefully, who knows what kind of wonky predictions we'd be looking at. It's like They're sifting for gold. You've got to sort through all the rubble to find those valuable nuggets of information. And speaking of those nuggets of information, let's get to the good stuff. What did these experts actually say about the future of AI?
So, ready to find out what the AI crystal ball says about our future?
I am, but I gotta say, even though we've got this whole data cleaning thing figured out, we're still only working with like a third of the paper, right? It's like trying to guess the whole plot of a movie just by watching the trailer.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, we might get some things right, but there's always going to be those twists and turns.
Yeah.
That we didn't see coming.
Exactly. But hey, I'm up for the challenge. Let's hear it. What's one prediction that really jumped out at you?
Okay, so how about this? The median year predicted by these AI experts for AI to write and compose a song that makes it onto the U.S. top 40 charts is 2032.
Whoa, 2032. That's not that far off. I mean, I know AI is already making some pretty impressive music these days, but to actually top the charts, that means it's not just, imitating human creativity. It's actually capturing something deeper, something that really resonates with people on a cultural level.
Right, and what I find particularly interesting is that the researchers didn't just stop at asking when. They actually dug deeper into the quality and impact of these AI achievements.
So it's not just about AI being able to compose a symphony. It's about AI composing a symphony that moves people, that sparks debates, that maybe even wins a Grammy.
Exactly. Or when it came to, say, language translation, they didn't just focus on AI replacing Google Translate. They asked about its potential to match the nuance and subtlety of a skilled human translator.
Okay, so imagine watching a foreign film, but instead of relying on subtitles, you have AI whispering the dialogue directly into your ear, capturing all the emotional weight of the original language, and even adapting it to fit the cultural context. Now, that's what I call a game changer.
It is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it that way.
And I guess that's what's so frustrating about only having part of this paper. I mean, we're getting these intriguing glimpses into how these experts envision AI's future, but we're missing that crucial context, like what other tasks did they ask about? Did they consider AI achieving world peace? Or maybe AI writing the next great American novel?
Those are certainly questions worth asking. And it really highlights how important it is to understand not just the what of these predictions, but also the why.
The why and the how.
Exactly. Because those missing sections could contain crucial information about how they define success for each task.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like, we see a prediction for AI folding laundry, but what does that even mean? Does it mean perfectly replicating the way a human folds a shirt? Or just getting the clothes neatly into a drawer? Those are two very different levels of success.
Absolutely. And that distinction could significantly impact the predicted timeline.
Right. And it makes you wonder, did they apply that same level of scrutiny to all the tasks? Winning at Go is one thing. There are clear winners and losers. But what about something like writing a best-selling novel?
Or even composing a hit song, like we discussed earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Did they differentiate between genres? Were they thinking about literary masterpieces? Or just catchy pop songs? Ugh, the nuances matter. It's like we're missing the secret ingredient. Or like the missing puzzle piece. We're seeing the predictions, but we don't know the full story behind them.
It definitely makes you realize that even predicting the future of AI isn't just about data and algorithms.
Right. There's this whole human element that we can't ignore.
Absolutely. Humans are the ones choosing which questions to ask and how to even define success when it comes to AI.
So where does that leave us then? We've gone through all these predictions about what AI might be able to do, some of them sooner than I expected, I have to say. But we also know that there are these big chunks of information missing.
Well, I think it comes down to this. These predictions offer a really interesting look at what AI might be capable of in the future. But we should approach these timelines with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Right. It's not like these baits are set in stone.
Exactly. It's more about starting a conversation about the role we want AI to play in our lives.
And how we shape that role.
Precisely.
It's about asking not just when, but why and how and what if.
I like that.
We shouldn't just be passive bystanders in all of this. We can be active participants in shaping how this technology unfolds.
I think that's a great note to end on.
I do too. And hey, if anyone out there happens to have the first two parts of this paper, you know where to find us. We would love to dive even deeper into this. But until then, keep those minds curious and those questions coming.